The void swarm was eating entire star systems like a monster devouring candy. Admiral Veltara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching her screens in horror as another Centaurian colony simply vanished. These weren't just attacks anymore. This was genocide on a galactic scale. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Kepler defense grid," reported her communications officer, his blue skin pale with fear. "That's 12 systems in the past month." Veltara's forearms trembled slightly. In her 300 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. The void swarm didn't just destroy, they consumed everything. Metal, rock, even the stars themselves seemed to dim after the creatures passed through. Meanwhile, in the emergency council chambers on Nexus Prime, the galaxy's most powerful leaders sat around a crystalline table that had witnessed 1,000 years of peaceful negotiations. Today, peace felt like a luxury they could no longer afford. Chancellor Mordek's crystal body flickered between colors, a sure sign of extreme stress among his people. "The mathematical projections are clear," he announced to the assembled delegates. "At their current rate of expansion, the void swarm will consume our core worlds within 6 months. Ambassador the Sist of the Aquarian Federation slammed her tentacle against the table. "Our best scientists can't even understand how they move through space without hyperdrives. Our weapons barely scratch their hull plating." "What about the Zephyrian battle fleets?" asked Counselor Vex, his insectoid features clicking nervously. "Gone," Mordek replied flatly. "All of them. The swarm adapted to their energy weapons within hours and turned their own ships against them." The room fell into a heavy silence. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millennia through diplomacy, trade, and carefully calculated military actions. But calculation meant nothing against an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. Finally, old Ambassador Kreltos spoke from his hoverchair. His voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silent chamber, everyone heard him clearly. "There is one option we haven't discussed." Every eye in the room turned toward him. Kreltos had been around longer than most civilizations. He remembered things others preferred to forget. "The Deathworlders," he continued, and several delegates physically recoiled at the words. "The humans of Salthri." The reaction was immediate and visceral. Nervous, chittering, angry buzzing, and the sound of scales scraping against chairs filled the chamber. Humanity was the boogeyman of galactic politics, the violent species that had been locked away for their own good and everyone else's safety. "You can't be serious," Dis is hissed. "They're savages, barbarians, who solve everything with violence. Their planet tried to kill them every single day for millions of years," added Vex. "Earthquakes, volcanoes, poisonous atmosphere, predators that hunt in packs. It's classified as a Class 9 death world for good reason." Mordek's crystalline form flickered to a deep red, the color of dangerous thoughts. "Their first contact protocols involved ramming one of our exploration vessels with a nuclear-powered spacecraft. They thought we were invading, but wasn't finished. Yes, they're violent. Yes, they're unpredictable. But they're also the only species in known space that evolved specifically to survive impossible odds. Every other civilization in this room developed on garden worlds with stable climates and abundant resources." He gestured toward the tactical display showing the swarm's advance. "We've tried logic. We've tried superior technology. We've tried coordinated military strategy. Everything that made us the dominant powers in this galaxy. And we're losing." The old ambassador's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Because deep down, they all knew he was right. After what felt like hours of debate, Chancellor Mordek made the decision that would change everything. "Ambassador Krautus, activate the soul communication array. It's time to make a deal with the devils we've been hiding from." The ancient communication system hadn't been used in decades. As it powered up, static filled the chamber, the sound of a message traveling across impossible distances to reach a quarantined world on the edge of known space. Earth vessels. This is the Galactic Coalition. Krelto spoke into the transmitter. We require immediate military assistance against an extinction-level threat. Will you respond? The reply came back so fast it made everyone jump. A human voice, rough and confident, crackling through the speakers with an energy that none of them had heard in their polite diplomatic circles for centuries. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. We've been watching your swarm problem on long-range sensors. We'll be there in 3 days. Morrison out. The connection ended abruptly. No negotiations. No demands for compensation. No political maneuvering. Just a simple promise from a species that the galaxy had tried very hard to forget. As the council members sat in stunned silence, each of them wondered the same thing. Had they just saved the galaxy, or doomed it to something even worse than the Void Swarm? When the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, exactly 72 hours later, Admiral Veltara nearly choked on her morning nutrition paste. Through her bridge's main view screen, she watched what could only be described as the most ridiculous collection of spacecraft she had ever seen in her military career. The lead ship was clearly some kind of industrial mining platform, a massive, ugly chunk of metal and machinery that looked like someone had strapped engines to an asteroid processing plant. Behind it came cargo haulers, with missile launchers welded to their hulls, passenger cruise ships bristling with improvised weapon systems, and what appeared to be a luxury yacht, with enough firepower to level a small moon, by the ancient spirits, whispered her tactical officer. What are those things? Admiral Veltara zoomed in on the human flagship. The name Liberty's Hammer was painted across its hull in bold letters, right next to what appeared to be artwork of a scantily clad human, female riding some kind of explosive device. She had heard humans were crude, but this was beyond her expectations. The human admiral's face appeared on her communication screen, a weather-beaten man with gray streaks in his hair and scars that told stories of too many close calls. His uniform looked like it had been through several wars, and his smile was the kind that made smart people nervous. Coalition Command, this is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet, he announced cheerfully. Sorry, we're a bit late. Had to stop and pick up some extra supplies. We're locked, loaded, and ready to kick some alien butt. In the background, Veltara could hear distinctly human voices shouting things like, "Where do you want these torpedo tubes? And someone find me a bigger wrench. This plasma cannon isn't going to mount itself." Admiral Morrison Veltara began carefully, trying to maintain some semblance of military protocol. Your vessels appear to be civilian conversions. Where are your actual military warships? Morrison's grin widened. Lady, you're looking at them. The cargo hauler behind me used to run supplies to mining colonies. Now she's got enough missiles to glass a planet. That cruise ship over there used to take rich folks on vacation tours. Now the ballroom's been converted into a fighter bay, and the swimming pool is full of torpedo tubes. He gestured toward another ship in his ragtag fleet, and that beauty there is the Lucky Strike. Used to be a luxury casino ship. Now, she's our heavy weapons platform. The owner figured if he was going to lose his shirt anyway, might as well do it, fighting space monsters. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez appeared beside Morrison on the screen. Her uniform was stained with engine grease, and she had what looked like a plasma torch in one hand. Sir, we've got the last of the mining lasers calibrated for combat use. The crew wants to know if they should start the reactors hot, or wait for your signal. Keep them warm, Amy, Morrison replied. I have a feeling we won't be waiting long. Veltara's mandibles clicked nervously, a sure sign of stress among her species. Admiral, with respect, these appear to be hastily modified civilian vessels. Do your crews have any actual combat training? Morrison laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both reassuring and terrifying. Ma'am, every human alive is combat trained. Our planet spent millions of years trying to kill us. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, plagues, Predators that could bite through steel. We learned real quick that the universe doesn't care if you're ready for a fight. He gestured around his makeshift bridge. My weapons officer used to run freight between asteroid belts, dodging pirates and navigation hazards every day. My engineers spent 10 years keeping mining equipment running in conditions that would melt your fancy ships. And my navigator learned to plot courses through solar storms that would scramble your computers. Before Veltara could respond, every alarm on her bridge started screaming at once. Her sensor operator's voice cracked with fear. "Admiral, massive hyperspace signatures detected. It's the Void Swarm." Through the view screen, space itself seemed to tear open as dozens of biomechanical monstrosities emerged from the dark. The swarm ships looked like nightmares, made real organic curves, mixed with mechanical precision, pulsing with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. "All Coalition ships, evasive maneuvers," Veltara commanded, following every tactical manual ever written. "Maintain formation and prepare for defensive operations." But the humans did something completely different. "All ships, this is Morrison." The human admiral's voice boomed across the communication channels, filled with what sounded suspiciously like excitement. "Full power to engines. We're going right down their throats." Veltara watched in absolute horror as the human fleet accelerated directly toward the Void Swarm. No formation flying, no careful positioning, no defensive screens. Just a mad charge straight into the teeth of the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. "Morrison, what are you doing?" she shouted into her communicator. "Those are Class 5 bioships. They'll tear you apart." The human admiral's reply was lost in the sound of his crew whooping and cheering like they were heading to some kind of sporting event instead of probable death. The last thing she heard clearly was Morrison's voice, filled with grim satisfaction. "Time for some pest control, boys and girls. Let's show these bugs what happens when they mess with Earth." And then the human fleet disappeared into the swarm of alien nightmares. Guns blazing and engines roaring, leaving behind a very confused collection of Coalition admirals who were beginning to wonder if asking for human help had been a terrible mistake. What happened next made every alien military academy textbook completely useless. The humans didn't fight like any civilized species in the galaxy. They fought like absolute maniacs who had completely lost their minds. "Admiral," Veltara watched through her view screen as a human cargo hauler deliberately rammed itself into a Void Swarm bioship 3 times its size. The collision should have destroyed the smaller vessel instantly. Instead, the human ship's reinforced hull tore through the alien creature's organic armor, and both ships exploded in a brilliant flash that temporarily blinded her sensors. "By the ancestors," her tactical officer whispered. "Did they just use their own ship as a missile?" Before she could answer, another human vessel, this one clearly a former passenger liner, accelerated toward a cluster of swarm fighters, but instead of firing weapons, the ship suddenly vented all its atmosphere through jury-rigged ports, creating a massive debris cloud that blinded the enemy's sensors. Then it opened fire with what appeared to be modified garbage disposal units, shooting chunks of metal at near light speed. "Chief Engineer." Tom Bradley's voice crackled over the open channels from his ship New Vegas. The former luxury cruise liner had been turned into something that would give safety inspectors nightmares. Weapon systems bolted to the hull wherever they could fit, and enough explosive charges to level a small city. "Attention all ships. This is Bradley," he announced, with the kind of calm that only came from someone who had accepted his own death. "I'm taking the big ugly one in the center. If anyone's got any last words, now's the time." Through her telescopic viewers, Veltara watched as Bradley's ship accelerated toward the largest swarm vessel, a biomechanical nightmare the size of a small moon. The casino ship's hull was already glowing from battle damage, atmosphere streaming out of dozens of holes, but it kept moving forward. "This is Bradley. I'm going all in," he shouted, and Veltara realized with horror that he was piloting his ship directly into the enemy's core structure. The explosion that followed was visible from 3 star systems away. The massive swarm vessels simply disintegrated, along with 2 smaller bioships that had been using it for cover. But the humans weren't done being crazy. Captain Lisa Parker's mining vessel Dust Devil emerged from the explosion's debris field like some kind of avenging ghost. Her ship had been designed to cut through asteroids, and now those same industrial lasers were slicing through swarm hull armor like it was made of paper. Her crew was working frantically to overclock the mining equipment, even as atmosphere vented through hull breaches around them. "Parker to all ships," she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If you've got mining gear, dial it up to maximum power. These bugs don't like it when you cut them the same way we cut rocks." On the bridge of Liberty's Hammer, Admiral Morrison was coordinating the battle, while his crew performed what could only be described as mechanical miracles. His weapons officer, Commander Rick Davis, had blood running down his face from a head wound, but he was still working his console with both hands. "Sir, we're taking heavy damage," Davis reported, not even bothering to wipe away the blood. "But I'm starting to see patterns in their attack formations. These things fight like computers, all logic and predictable responses." Morrison grinned, watching as another human ship turned itself into a guided missile. "That's their problem, Rick. They're trying to fight a logical war against people who learned survival from a planet that wanted to kill them every single day." The Void Swarm bioships were starting to show signs of confusion. Their organic computers had evolved to counter standard military tactics, formations, flanking maneuvers, strategic retreats. But humans didn't do any of those things. They did whatever came to mind first, and it was driving the swarm's hive mind absolutely crazy. Sergeant Major Diana Foster's voice came over the communications system, and Veltara realized with shock that the human was broadcasting from outside her ship in the vacuum of space during active combat. "Foster to Morrison," she called out casually, as if she was discussing the weather instead of floating in hard vacuum between enemy vessels. "My boarding party has successfully attached. Charges 2-3 swarm ships. We're moving to target for now. These things really don't expect anyone to be crazy enough to spacewalk in the middle of a battle." Morrison laughed, actually laughed, while explosions bloomed around his ship. "Outstanding work, Sergeant Major. Remember, we're not trying to win pretty. We're just trying to win." Another human ship exploded spectacularly, taking 2 swarm vessels with it in a chain reaction of destruction. Instead of mourning the loss, the remaining human crews cheered and immediately started looking for their own ramming opportunities. Veltara watched this madness with a mixture of horror and grudging admiration. These humans weren't just fighting the Void Swarm, they were confusing it, frustrating it, and slowly but surely wearing it down through sheer unpredictable chaos. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "the swarm ships are starting to make tactical errors. Their formation integrity is breaking down." Veltara nodded slowly. The humans had found the one weakness that none of the galaxy's greatest military minds had discovered. The Void Swarm simply couldn't adapt to opponents who had no strategy, except controlled insanity. As she watched another converted human freighter ram itself into a bioship while playing what sounded like primitive Earth music over the comm channels, Veltara began to understand why the galaxy had been so eager to quarantine these creatures. They weren't just dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they were completely, utterly, and effectively unpredictable. As the battle continued, Admiral Veltara began to understand something that chilled her to the bone. The humans weren't just crazy. They were surviving in conditions that should have killed them 10 times over. Her sensors were picking up radiation levels inside human ships that would turn her crew into glowing puddles within minutes. The atmospheric pressure in some of their vessels had dropped so low that most species would explode from the inside out. And somehow, These Deathworld barbarians were still fighting like nothing was wrong. Captain Bobby Wells' freighter, Iron Horse, was a perfect example. The ship had taken so much damage that it was basically a flying wreck, held together by determination and duct tape. The life support systems had failed 20 minutes ago, and Valtara's computers calculated that any crew inside should already be dead from oxygen deprivation. But Wells' voice still crackled over the comm system, calm as someone ordering coffee. "Martinez, what's our status?" His navigator, Corporal Jenny Martinez, responded while working at her station in what appeared to be a pressure suit made from spare engine parts and plastic sheeting. "We've got maybe 10 minutes of air left in these improvised suits, sir. After that, we're breathing vacuum." Wells nodded like this was a minor inconvenience. "Copy that. Martinez, you and Thompson get to the escape pods. I'll ram that big bite over there and take it out." But Martinez just shook her head, her makeshift helmet reflecting the explosions outside. "With all due respect, Captain, I didn't come this far to miss the big finish. Besides, who's going to navigate if you're flying solo?" Thompson, the ship's engineer, looked up from where he was literally welding hull plates back together, while enemy fire peppered their position. "Count me in too, sir. This old girl's been good to us. Least we can do is give her a proper send-off." Meanwhile, the Void Swarm was starting to adapt to human tactics, just like it had adapted to every other species it had consumed. The bioships began changing their attack patterns, reinforcing their weak points, and coordinating their movements to counter human unpredictability. But the humans just got more creative. Commander Steve Anderson realized his ship's artificial gravity generator was damaged and fluctuating wildly. Instead of trying to fix it, he turned it into a weapon. "All crew, secure for gravity manipulation," he announced, then began creating crushing gravitational fields that imploded enemy vessels like tin cans. Captain Rachel Kim took a different approach entirely. Her cargo hauler was equipped with massive magnetic cranes designed for moving asteroids in mining operations. So she started literally picking up chunks of space rock and hurling them at the swarm ships with enough force to punch holes through their Kim to all ships, she called out cheerfully, while her crane grabbed a particularly large asteroid. "Anyone need some heavy artillery? I've got plenty of rocks, and nowhere else to put them." Admiral Veltara watched in fascination as human crew members performed repairs that should have been impossible. They were working with their bare hands on systems that were radiating enough energy to cook most organic life forms. They were welding hull breaches while standing in hard vacuum, using equipment that hadn't been designed for combat conditions, and somehow making it all work. Her medical officer ran a bioscan on one of the human ships and nearly fainted. "Admiral, I'm reading internal temperatures that would melt our hull plating. How are they still alive in there?" The answer came from Dr. Patricia Hall, chief medical officer aboard one of the human vessels. Her voice was professional and calm, even though she was clearly working in what amounted to a mobile disaster zone. "Evolution, my alien friends. Our planet had weather that could kill you, predators that could eat you, diseases that could dissolve you, and natural disasters that happened every Tuesday. We learned to adapt or die." She paused to help her crew convert medical supplies into some kind of biochemical weapon. "These swarm things are tough, but they're not tougher than a Category 5 hurricane or a supervolcanic eruption. We've been dealing with worse than this since before we discovered fire." The Void Swarm's bioships had begun regenerating damage, their organic components literally healing themselves during combat. For most species, this would have been the end of the battle, but the humans just started targeting different systems. "Can't heal what you can't feed," Dr. Hall muttered as she helped launch canisters of modified antibiotics at the enemy vessels. "These things are part organic, right? Let's see how they handle a case of cosmic food poisoning." Engineer Thompson's voice came over the comm from another ship. "If they're regenerating, that means they need nutrients. cut off the nutrient flow, and they're just big metal coffins floating in space. The humans began targeting the bioship's feeding systems, digestive organs, and nutrient processing centers with surgical precision, where other species saw invincible regenerating monsters. The humans saw biological systems that could be disrupted, poisoned, or simply starved to death. Valterra realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. These weren't just warriors, they were survivors from a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them in every way possible. They had learned to thrive in conditions that would annihilate most civilized species, and now they were applying those survival skills to space combat. As another human ship exploded brilliantly while taking 3 swarm vessels with it, the crew's final transmission was actually laughter, not screams of terror or desperate pleas for help. Laughter. These humans weren't just fighting the void swarm, they were having fun doing it, and that, Valterra realized, with growing amazement, might just be enough to save the galaxy. Just when it seemed like the humans might actually be winning their insane battle against the void swarm, something emerged from deep space that made every previous enemy ship look like a toy. The central hive mind vessel appeared through a massive tear in reality, a biomechanical nightmare the size of Earth's moon, pulsing with organic light and bristling with weapons that defied understanding. Admiral Valterra's entire bridge crew fell silent as their sensors tried to process what they were seeing. The thing wasn't just big, it was alive in ways that hurt to think about. Tentacles the size of skyscrapers writhed across its surface, and massive eyes that seemed to look directly into their souls tracked the movement of every ship in the battle zone. All coalition forces, immediate withdrawal, Valterra commanded, her voice cracking with barely controlled panic. Fall back to minimum safe distance. That thing could swallow our entire fleet without noticing. The remaining alien warships began their retreat, their crews thankful to put distance between themselves and the cosmic horror that had just arrived. But the humans did something completely different. Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communications system, steady and determined. All remaining human ships form up on Liberty's hammer. We're going to take that thing out. Jake, are you completely insane? Valterra shouted into her communicator. That vessel is the size of a planetoid. Your entire fleet couldn't scratch its hull plating. Morrison's laugh was grim, but genuine. Ma'am, you're probably right. But someone's got to try, and we've never been real good at knowing when to quit. On Liberty's Hammer's bridge, Morrison looked around at his remaining crew. Most of his fleet was gone now, converted into expanding clouds of debris and heroic sacrifice. His skeleton crew consisted entirely of volunteers who had refused evacuation orders when he announced his final plan. Commander Amy Rodriguez sat at the navigation console, her hands steady, despite knowing this was a one-way trip. Chief Engineer Tom Bradley, not the one who had died taking out the earlier hive ship, but his brother, who had volunteered to take his place, was already preparing every explosive device they had left. A dozen other crew members worked quietly at their stations, each one having made peace with what was coming. Jake, you don't have to do this alone, Rodriguez said quietly, checking their approach vector to the massive hive vessel. We could try to find another way. Morrison smiled, the kind of expression that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues, and natural disasters that would have broken lesser species. Amy, that's what makes us human. We never do anything alone, and we never give up when people are counting on us. The remaining human ships formed a protective formation around Liberty's hammer as it accelerated toward the hive vessel. The alien bioship's weapon systems came online, filling space with energy blasts that could vaporize mountains. The smaller human vessels threw themselves into the path of those weapons, using their own destruction to clear a path for Morrison's final run. This is Morrison to all coalition forces, the Admiral announced, as his ship dove toward the hive vessel's core structure. It's been an honor serving alongside you. Take care of each other out there. Liberty's hammer, the converted asteroid mining platform that had started this crazy battle, slammed into the hive vessel's central nervous system with the force of a small meteor. But Morrison wasn't done yet. As his ship buried itself deep in the alien creature's vital organs, he detonated every reactor, every torpedo, every improvised explosive they had managed to jury-rig during the battle. The explosion started small, just a bright flash, deep inside the massive bioship. Then it began to spread, a chain reaction of destruction that traveled through the creature's organic neural networks like wildfire, through dry grass. The hive mind vessel convulsed, its massive tentacles flailing as its central consciousness simply ceased to exist, without their commanding intelligence. The remaining void swarm bioships across the battlefield suddenly became mindless animals. They stopped coordinating their attacks, stopped adapting to enemy tactics, and started flying into each other in confusion. The surviving coalition forces, small as they were, easily finished off the confused and leaderless remnants. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Of the dozens of human ships that had arrived 3 days ago, only a handful remained intact. Most of humanity's volunteer fleet was now scattered across space as glowing debris and fading energy signatures. As rescue operations began, Admiral Veltara expected to find broken survivors waiting for evacuation. Instead, she discovered human crew members already scavenging useful materials from the wreckage, sorting through salvageable equipment, and making plans to rebuild their ships with whatever they could find. "Don't you want to go home?" she asked Captain Lisa Parker, who had somehow kept her mining vessel Dust Devil in one piece through the entire battle. "Don't you want to rest and recover?" Parker looked up from where she was welding a piece of swarm biometal to her ship's hull as improvised armor plating. "Ma'am, this is what we do. We fix what's broken, we build what we need, and we keep moving forward. Home will still be there when we get back." During the memorial service for the human dead, held in the cargo bay of one of the surviving coalition vessels, Veltora made an offer that surprised everyone, including herself. "The Galactic Coalition offers humanity full membership," she announced to the assembled survivors. "Resources, technology, territory, trade agreements, name your terms. After what you've done here, you've earned the right to sit at the head of our council table." Captain Parker, now the senior human officer, listened politely before shaking her head with a smile. "We appreciate the offer, Admiral. We really do. But we're needed back home. Earth's got 7 billion people who are probably wondering where we went, and there's always another crisis that needs handling." She gestured toward the patched-up human ships preparing for their journey home. "Besides, next time something like this shows up, and there will be a next time, you know where to find us. Just send a message to Sol3, and we'll come running." As the battered human fleet departed for Earth, their ships held together by determination, spare parts, and what appeared to be large amounts of welding equipment, Admiral Veltara watched them go with a mixture of gratitude and newfound respect. For centuries, the galaxy's great civilizations had believed that advancement meant perfect technology, pristine worlds, and elegant solutions to complex problems. But watching those scarred human vessels disappear into hyperspace, she realized they had been completely wrong. The galaxy's greatest protectors weren't the advanced species with their perfect ships and comfortable planets. They were the survivors, the ones who had learned to thrive in conditions that would kill anyone else, and who brought that stubborn refusal to give up with them to the stars. The Deathworlders hadn't been the help anyone expected. They had been exactly the help the galaxy needed.